This is Mordhau. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. If you are buying this game, or well, any game on the Xbox Store, the affiliate link in the video description takes to the Microsoft Store and supports the content. So yeah, what are we getting here? It is a 4K resolution, and it's trying to be 60 FPS. There are performance problems in the game. This is like a bot match that we're set up here, so, you know, it is a little, I guess you would say, perhaps a little bit more demanding than the online server elements of play. But, yeah, it kind of gives you an idea of everything under stress and whatnot. So we have kind of some interesting options in this one in regards to functionality. So there is PC gamepad support, and if you do go to the settings, you can adjust the field of view if you want to see more of the field of view. You can also change the camera perspective if you want to go into the third person and play from that particular visual perspective, if that is something of interest to you. So I thought I would kind of highlight that stuff. I personally find it a little awkward to play like this, so you know, we're just gonna kind of show off a little bit of it so you get an idea of what it's like in third person, but yeah, not necessarily kind of my favorite way to go about it. So this is a multiplayer focused night combat game. We've seen a few entries, you know, at this point. We've got, yeah, really just, that perspective doesn't work for me. You know, we've gotten things like Chivalry 2, which I absolutely love. We've gotten things like Mountain Blade, so this is not necessarily something new, but it's another option that you can enjoy. So it does feature things like a server browser, which is awesome to have, and then a variety of different game modes that you can dive into. It also benefits for, well, basically the fact that you get like a full local experience if you want to, but it doesn't seem like you actually earn XP and stuff, so you're not able to really customize your like character in that unless you're doing like the online things, unless that's going to be updated or changed. I don't know in that regard. But yeah, you're able to have 64-player local action across all the different game modes, across all the different maps, and there actually is quite a good amount of content in regards to modes, multiplayer elements, and ways to play. So let's start by talking about, I guess, some of the key modes here in this game. We've got, like, Frontline, where it's sort of a bit of a tug of war, but you don't really win necessarily, which is funny. Another thing I love is just the way they get, like, so congested in spots. It just kills me. Because there's 64 players, and then there's also, like, a 48-player match set up, too. So if things get a little too busy, you know, it's kind of funny. But anyways, yeah, the game does have a few different modes, and then there's Horde mode, which I really actually quite liked. So in Horde mode, you're working together in a group, and you have to defend, like, basically like a noble from getting killed, and these peasants, they rush in, and you just keep trying to survive wave after wave after wave after wave. And, you know, it's very funny because, like, the peasants start with, like, rocks, and then eventually they're, like, bowmen and people with swords, and you're using, like, every round you get a new, like, sort of skill point, and you can use that skill point in order to, yes, you can ride horses, too, and camels as well, depending on the map setup, the different biomes. But, yeah, you are kind of upgrading your character every round with the new XP points, and then past that you are earning money, so you use that money to buy the miscellaneous weapons that are everywhere. So there's like different swords, you can also buy armor, you can buy like a bow, and again, you're working together as a team in this mode, and I thought that was really quite interesting. I like that. Then we've got other things such as kind of deathmatch, you know, free-for-all kind of thing. There's team deathmatch. There's skirmish, where it's sort of round-based, you know, you're trying to eliminate the entire other team, and that's how you win a round. So a few different kind of, like, sort of, I guess you would say straight-up deathmatch type variations to, you know, as like a swordsman type thing. So they've actually got a few different modes that you can kind of enjoy. And yeah, it's kind of well-rounded in that regard. And like I said, with the server browser and stuff, I don't think there should be too many issues. I would imagine most people are very likely going to play the Frontline slash like invasion type mode, as that to me makes kind of the most sense in what I've seen out of, like, you know, essentially Chivalry. Just that being kind of the highlight. So you've got a bunch of different classes that are preset, so you get a feel for things. There's lots of weapons, lots of tools. You know, you can have like big kind of cleaver things, you can have javelins you throw, scythes, you can have different types of swords, and then you can have like secondary type items too if you want. And you are able to personalize your particular classes, like your character classes, if you do get, you know, you earn stuff in the game, and then you're able to be like, oh, I spawn with this weapon or this kind of gear or tool. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting concept in that regard. Like I said, I think this game actually is pretty well-rounded when it comes to the different ways to play, but this isn't really giving the best of like examples and showcases of the gameplay in action, since everyone is like really congested awkwardly in one space, which is not the best. Wow. So we're going to switch to another map, just so we can show off a little bit more variety. So we jumped into another match here on a different map, but we're still doing the Frontline offering. And as I was saying, you can see a lot of different weapons and tools that individuals will have. There's like a taunt wheel too you can do. You can flourish your things that's left on the D-pad. And then, yeah, you've got like also a very good variety of different costumes and customization. I don't know if it shows quite as well in this particular mode, but when you're doing something like Deathmatch, and you can see all of the different variety of like cool costumes and cosmetics and colors and stuff kind of going on. It looks really, really cool. There are some really awesome looking like designs for costumes and whatnot. I was really, really quite impressed with the variety. I was like, that is really, really quite cool. So yeah, I will note that I do think the game, like, aesthetically does look quite good. It does seem to have a sort of slow texture load in some scenarios, and sometimes that persists for quite a while. And yeah, the environments, they vary too, depending on what you're playing. So if you are playing something like, you know, I'm so sorry, teammates, Frontline, where it's, you know, these larger maps. If you're playing Deathmatch, it's going to be a lot tighter. And you could still fit like 64 players into like Deathmatch, which is kind of funny if you're doing like local stuff, because everything's just like really tightly knit together. And it is gory and it is violent. The dismemberment and sort of like the way the damage is done is really quite brutal and gruesome in this game. They really do, I think, nail that aspect of it. Like, you really can sort of just like slice and dice, and you can traverse the environment easily. And yeah, I'd say like the combat is really straightforward. Like, you sort of dodge, or not dodge, but you sort of block, and then you attack, and you block, and you attack. It doesn't quite feel as smooth as something like, again, I play a lot of Chivalry 2, so it doesn't feel quite as smooth as it does in that game, especially for like back and forth kind of battles. And you do get really overwhelmed in this game. They don't really give you the option to kind of like be able to block multiple opposing forces. If you are overwhelmed, you are overwhelmed indeed. So that aspect of it I thought was interesting. So it's like, to me, it's a bit more of a straightforward sort of hack and slash. But, you know, there is a variety to the weapons, as I've mentioned. So if you've got something like a bit of a mace, you know, that's going to swing differently with a bit of a different weighting to it than a different type of sword, like a great sword or, you know, stuff like that. So everything's got like a different sort of styling to it, but as I did mention, it does feel a little bit more simplistic from that angle. But it's not bad. Like, it's a decent sort of fighting, you know, medieval battling kind of game. I usually kind of compare these akin to like Battlefield, but with knights, but I don't think this one quite leans into that feeling as much as, like, say, Chivalry does. This one is a very interesting title. I think, you know, presentation-wise, it's pretty decent, but performance, it definitely leaves quite a lot to be desired. But I do, again, like it looks nice, you know, the lighting, the trees, the environment. The environments, they have different like layerings to them and different like buildings you can go in, and yeah, it's intriguing. It really is interesting. And then there's stuff that you can like interact with, but it's not to the degree of chivalry. And I don't want to just keep making comparisons, but you know, since these games don't have a whole lot of competition in the genre, it is best to kind of pull from, you know, where my knowledge really lies. So it's like in this one, you can kind of like, if there is a ladder, you can push it up. You might find like a ballista you can use. There might be like a torch that is in a fire pit that you can pick up and throw. But it's not like super detailed like Chivalry is, where you can pick up like random assortments of, say, food and stuff to chuck at people. That's not in this one. So it is a bit, I don't know, almost more serious in that regard. There are some like building stuff. I don't know if you've noticed that, with like little hammer icons and whatnot within the environment. So that's, again, a lot of sort of the roles you play during the battle will determine sort of what your, you know, job is and objective is when you are actually playing with others in this one. But yeah, it is interesting. Like, there is interactivity to it. It's kind of neat. I like that we have actually a genre of like different night-based games that we can enjoy, because, you know, literally not even like a generation ago, we didn't really have any options for multiplayer stuff like this, and now we've kind of got, I think, almost all of them that I can think of. I don't know, there might be some more out there, but it's pretty cool that we're getting this sort of thing. So I think if you are looking for like another fighting sword multiplayer game, like this one actually is decent. And like I said, you can just play it offline and play a ton of it if you'd like. But I think the fun of this one is obviously going to be the online multiplayer experience, where you are battling with others. And, you know, it is nice that they did do the important things, such as having that server browser. It is such a essential and desired tool. I typically wouldn't even mention that kind of like element in a review usually. I wouldn't, you know, for some games I'd just be like, yeah, you match make fast, and that's, you know, it is what it is. But like having a server browser for these games is just, it's just awesome. It really is. There's a few like this with these multiplayer games that I think do fall a little bit more into the niche realm. Did he cut my hand off? Ugh. So that is nice to have present in this one. But yeah, there's lots of like personalization, adjustments, changing the look of your characters and stuff, if that's something you're into. Those are things you kind of earn while playing in the game, which is nice. But yeah, it's sort of a pretty straightforward thing. I don't personally feel this one is quite as smooth and at the level of, like, say, Chivalry 2, but it is a nice addition, a nice different sort of game, you know. It's got some different moves to it for how you fight, attacking, the blocking, you know, that's kind of interesting. It's a little straightforward, but it is vicious, it is violent, it is gory. You know, there's a lot of conflict that happens in this game. It's got some neat aspects like, you know, the horseback riding and fighting and some of the light buildings, light interaction elements. And I'd say its strengths really come down to, like, the variety of stuff in it. You know, this seems like something that is sort of complete. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that's been available for a while on, you know, in another place, and they're bringing it to console. Like, there is a great selection of maps. There is a good selection of weapons. There is lots of customization and personalization within the experience. There's a lot of different modes. And I don't know if every mode works perfectly well for everyone, but, you know, there's the variety that you expect. You've got your death matches, you've got some more objective-based stuff, and I think that Horde mode is actually pretty cool. As I was saying earlier, it's got some really neat layering to it, and I actually do recommend checking it out because I'm like, it's simple in its like layout because there's literally just like weapons just hanging everywhere, and there's like a goblin when you put if you want to sell stuff to get some extra cash to buy more stuff. I actually kind of wish that they would take it further with like some more trap type stuff would be really neat, but like for this game and everything like that, I think it works, and I think it's kind of a fun sort of thing to have that actually offers something different. Because like you would expect most of this to be straight PvP, right? You know, straight conflict, straight combat, battling in large groups, and that's really quite awesome. But then you have like this sort of thing where you're able to work together against waves of enemies, and the enemies are actually, again, just kind of hilarious. Like, a lot of them, they'll come in and they'll just be hurling rocks at you while you're trying to fight. And it's very, very entertaining from that perspective. I was like, that in itself is actually pretty funny. So I think Horde mode offers something quite neat. And I think, you know, if they do kind of keep updating this one with stuff, I think it definitely does have some potential. Like, it looks cool, it plays well. It's something I've heard a lot of people being rather excited about it kind of arriving and stuff, or being something that's available. So I think there should be a bit of an audience for this one. We'll have to obviously wait and see on that. And it's just, it really does get quite crazy when there is good bunches of people, and you know, these maps do actually kind of push people together in tighter spots of conflict. It's quite cool. And I like that you'd play different roles, and I think that's the biggest thing, is kind of seeing how the multiplayer grows in terms of how people build sort of their classes and the roles they play, and how that impacts the conflict between the differing factions, and then also depending on the type of players that you have with you, you know, are you doing more PvP stuff, are you enjoying some of the, you know, the horde mode with the PvE? Like, it's varied, but not too overly varied, so it should keep players in tighter arrangements of, you know, kind of conflict and battle, I would say, along the way. And it's just kind of like, it works for this game, I think. So it's alright. You know, it's like a decent hack and slash sword fighting game. I don't know if it's necessarily got like the deepest amount of like depth to the combat, but you know, you've got some different moves, some different ways to fight. You've got some neat environments that you get to go into. It does look decently well. You know, it does seem to play decently well. Performance, like I said, at least for like this local stuff, leaves a bit to be desired. But yeah, online-wise, it's not as heavy unless everything gets really congested. You know what I mean? So I do think it is time to switch to a tighter game mode just to show a little bit something else off as well. So yeah, I thought the Horde mode should probably be something we showcase here since I was talking so much about it. But yeah, it's just kind of this fun little thing where it's like there's all these weapons strewn about, and you're literally just trying to protect the noble and that, and yeah, it's kind of quirky and cool, and you'll see all the rocks and stuff being hurled in just a moment. But yeah, I think, you know, Mordhau has an interesting future ahead of it in terms of being something different within the melee medieval kind of combat game. I like these types of games. I like that there's a variety of different options. I like that they're trying something new with the game modes, you know, something different. I am curious to see how this one sort of is responded to, you know, how intrigued people are about it. As, you know, I think these ones really do flourish with online combat, so hopefully, these guys are really kind of taking it to me. Hopefully the online stuff actually does, you know, have a good amount of players and does get some support. We'll have to wait and see in that regard, of course. But even if not, there is some good local battling that you can do. You can enjoy it basically all contained in local if you need to. You know, the Horde mode is kind of fun. You got a variety of different modes. You can have up to 64 like bots and stuff. So there's lots of action and enjoyment to have in this one. So I do think it's kind of an intriguing offering, and a really violent, deathly time, and I hope it kind of really takes off. It should be interesting to see.